Hey guys, it's Ina. I hope you're well. It's been a while since my last upload. Life happened. I had my final assessments and got pretty good grades. I went to Turkey with my besties and it was really fun, and now I'm back home in Tanzania with my family. Most importantly, I didn't tell you, but I finally got off the waiting list for uni counseling, which I call therapy, and I've had 5 sessions so far. I'm going to have the remaining 5 when I get back to the UK after the summer, but in the meantime, I want to talk a bit about my mental health problems, self-criticism, self-confidence, and self-compassion. So obviously, we worked with a lot of my mental health problems in therapy, but in recent sessions, in response to my feelings of anger, frustration, and sadness, my therapist told me that I'm very self-critical and I need to practice self-compassion. She talked about self-compassion with me briefly and sent me some articles in the workbook that I could go through over the summer. And I'm quite certain that a lot of people experience the same struggles that I do, so I thought it would be a good idea that we go through these together and perhaps help ourselves, even if it's just a little. Self-compassion. So what is self-compassion? Derived from Latin, the term refers to how we're with suffering. Psychologist and self-compassion expert Dr. Kristin Neff defines self-compassion as being open and moved by one's own suffering, experiencing feelings of caring and kindness toward oneself, taking an understanding, non-judgmental attitude toward one's inadequacies and failures, and recognizing that one's experience is part of the common human experience. Instead of mercilessly judging and criticizing yourself for various inadequacies or shortcomings, self-compassion means you are kind and understanding when confronted with your failings. After all, whoever said you're supposed to be perfect? You may try to change in ways that make yourself happy and healthy, but this is done because you care about yourself, not because you're worthless and unacceptable as you are. Perhaps most importantly, having self-compassion for yourself means you honor and accept your humanness. Things will not always go the way you want them to. You will encounter frustrations, losses will occur, you will make mistakes, you will bump up against your limitations, and fall short of your ideals. This is the human condition, a reality shared by all of us. The more you open to this reality and work with it, instead of constantly fighting against it, the more you will be able to practice self-compassion for yourself and your fellow humans in the experience of life. Elements of self-compassion. Dr. Neff also identifies 3 elements of self-compassion: self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. Self-kindness versus self-judgment. Self-compassion means being kind and understanding toward ourselves when we suffer, fail, or feel inadequate, rather than ignoring our pain or flagellating ourselves with self-criticism. We're warm and supportive when confronted with the imperfection of life rather than cold or harsh. We're helpful and encouraging like a good friend, coach, or mentor would be. This inner support allows us to feel safe and puts us in a better frame of mind to cope with challenges or make needed changes in our lives. Common humanity versus isolation. Self-compassion is rooted in our common humanity. When we struggle or make mistakes, there's often an irrational but pervasive sense of isolation, as if I were the only person in the world having this painful experience. All humans suffer, however, not the same way or the same amount, but the very definition of being human means being vulnerable, flawed, and imperfect. When we are self-compassionate, we recognize that our suffering connects us rather than separates us from others. Mindfulness versus over-identification. Self-compassion requires taking a balanced, mindful approach to our suffering so that we neither suppress or exaggerate it. Treating ourselves like we would a friend means we step outside our usual way of looking at things, putting our own situation into better perspective. Mindfulness allows us to turn toward our pain with acceptance of the present moment reality. It prevents us from becoming over-identified with difficult thoughts and feelings, so we aren't swept away by negative reactivity. Self-compassion versus self-criticism. Now, self-criticism is quite the enemy of self-compassion. But for me, self-criticism is quite difficult to identify because I see them as objective facts or criteria to assess myself so I can improve. After all, I don't want to spoil myself and be a terrible person. It is a protective mechanism for me. Psychotherapist Brooke Schwartz writes that, in terms of evolution, self-criticism developed as a response to social emotions such as shame, humiliation, and guilt, with the purpose being to increase our sense of control, self-protect from others' judgment, redirect our anger, and motivate ourselves to change our behavior next time. In short, self-criticism is an evolved strategy to stay part of the in-group in order to survive. However, while she notes that it is important to befriend and protect inner critique, self-criticism doesn't work. Self-criticism doesn't increase your sense of control, but rather tricks your brain into feeling in control. Instead of protecting yourself from the others' judgments, self-criticism subjects you to your own. While it may redirect anger, this also means that your emotions are suppressed rather than expressed. And while some will say that self-criticism motivates them to change, this is directly against a core tenet of behaviorism, that punishment is not as powerful as reinforcement. This was quite difficult to accept for me because I felt like I was being rational and in control, while my therapist points out that I was being very self-critical, which deliberately undermines my protective mechanism. And it is alright, it is something that's difficult to accept. You gotta work with it. Self-compassion versus self-esteem. Another very important concept to recognize is that self-compassion is different from self-esteem. I feel like I had a lot higher self-esteem when I was younger, but the more I grew up, the more it decreased. When I have high self-esteem, I feel like I'm on top of the world, better than everyone else, and I'm able to achieve anything in life. And during these periods, I have great mental health. And vice versa, when I have low self-esteem, feeling so weak and vulnerable, I have terrible mental health. But self-compassion is different from self-esteem. While self-esteem involves comparing your abilities with others or against a golden standard in order to feel superior or valued, self-compassion orients you to the act of caring for yourself regardless of your abilities. Or to better put it for me, success. Self-esteem is outcomes-oriented, whereas self-compassion is process-oriented. Neff's research shows that self-compassion provides greater emotional resilience and stability than self-esteem. Indeed, loving yourself for just being yourself and loving yourself for your success are two very different things, and the former is definitely a much stronger love that comes with greater emotional stability. How to be more self-compassionate. Schwartz knows 9 key points in her article, How to Be Kinder to Yourself. 1. Self-criticism doesn't work. Instead of protecting you from others' judgment, self-criticism subjects you to your own. 2. Self-compassion is a beneficial alternative. It's not about boosting your self-esteem. It's about kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness, and it brings many mental and physical benefits. 3. Self-compassion doesn't always come easy. You might see yourself as undeserving. Remember that taking a compassionate approach to your failures and mistakes will increase your motivation to change your behavior. 4. Learn to identify self-criticism. If it's become an ingrained habit, you might not even realize you're doing it, and I highly relate to that. 5. Befriend your inner critique. This might sound counterintuitive, but it will pay off in the longer term. 6. Reframe judgmental thoughts as factual ones. By doing this, you dial down the self-criticism and think more constructively about how you could learn from what happened. 7. Practice soothing touch. Try wrapping your arms around yourself, lying under a soft or weighted blanket, stroking your arm by touching your hand to your heart or cheek. 8. Talk to a younger version of yourself. By externalizing and connecting with a version of yourself that isn't technically present, you might even find you can more easily access a compassionate approach. And finally, 9. Identify your values. Self-compassion is more effective when directed towards supporting your needs rather than being a vague promise to be kinder to yourself. To understand your needs, you must first have some sense of what you value most in life. And that's an introduction to self-compassion. I'm getting started with the workbook very soon, and I will go through the 7 modules in my upcoming videos. If you're interested, leave a comment or check out the links to the articles and the workbook below. I hope this has been helpful. Have a great day. Take care of yourself. Bye bye.